here from Scoop-In Response, and today's deck is Hofri Ghostforge. It is a quote-unquote food chain deck that is extremely aggressively slanted. What we're going to be doing is vomiting a whole bunch of creatures onto the battlefield, and we're going to be putting the pressure on our opponents straight away. Hofri is one of the new Boros commanders, or I don't even know what the new school's name is, not Boros, but it's a red-white commander that was released with Strixhaven. Absolutely awesome commander. He reads as follows. He's a 3 red and a white legendary creature dwarf cleric. Spirits you control get +1/+1 and have trample and haste. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, exile it. If you do, create a token that's a copy of that creature, except it's a spirit in addition to its other types and has, when this creature leaves the battlefield, return the exiled card to your graveyard. So, pretty awesome commander. There's all kind of ways that you can abuse this ability, particularly around things that are going to generate you excess mana or cards that you can cast from exile. So if you think to decks like Korvold Food Chain or any of the Teemo food chains that use Mist Hollow Griffin, Eternal Scourge, and Squee the Immortal, well, we don't have access to green or blue, so we can't do that, but we're going to be using Squee the Immortal, and we're going to be using Eternal Scourge as these quote-unquote food chain loops. So the way that this works is with Hofri Ghostforge's ability, essentially every time you sacrifice something, you get to exile it, and then you can cast things like Eternal Scourge and Squee the Immortal from exile. But if you exile it and create a token copy of it, or rather if you sacrifice it, exile it and create a token copy of it, and you use something like Burgi, God of Storytelling, or you use a Phyrexian altar or an Ashnod's altar to generate mana while you're doing this, you can actually generate a loop by stacking all of the triggers and resolving them all in the appropriate order, where you sacrifice a creature, that creature is then exiled and a token copy is created. You've made your first mana there, then you sacrifice another, sacrifice the token copy of it, which then triggers it again, and then you move Squee into the graveyard from there, and then you can actually cast it from the graveyard again there again. So essentially it's a whole bunch of complicated interactions in terms of how it all works. I'd encourage you to just lay all 3 of the cards or all 4 of the cards out in front of you and just look at how they all sort of layer with each other. But essentially what you can do is generate excess mana through these loops. And then to do the next step, we would then look at something like Impact Tremors or Goblin Bombardment to actually have a benefit from us actually casting and sacrificing and looping those creatures. Because, yeah, essentially it's a win on the spot if you've got either of those 2 cards out, because they will effectively deal damage each time you repeat the loop. So yeah, it's a bit of a flimsy combo, so it's nowhere near as tight as something like your food chain loop, because you only need 1 permanent to do that, and then you need your Squee or something like that. So it's not as tight as those, but we're not in green, and I thought it would be super fun to do it anyway. So we'll go over the creatures and planeswalkers. We've got Chandra, Torch of Defiance. I just like her as a bit of a mana rock that can also exile cards from the top of your library. It's got removal, and occasionally you'll get that emblem. It's just a value piece. We've got 3 1-drops, Impulsive Pilferer, Soul Warden, and Soul's Attendant. You use those. The Soul Sisters obviously we're using to gain life so that we can be swinging and not worrying about crackbacks. Impulsive Pilferer is great because you can sacrifice it, it creates that treasure token, and then you get another treasure token from the trigger from Hofri Ghostforge, and then you can get another 3 treasure tokens from using the Encore ability and exiling that as well. So very cool with that. But the super awesome thing about that is that you can yeah, essentially you can't do it with the token version, so you can't just make another 6 on top of that, which would be a bit of a shame, but you know, they've got to put the line somewhere. Yeah, 2-drops, we've got Anafenza, Kin Tree Spirit, Dockside Extortionist, Eidolon of Obstruction, and the Great Revel, Goblin Engineer, Selfless Spirit, Spirit of the Labyrinth. So all of these, you know, they're pretty well staples at this point. We've got a lot of artifacts in this deck, so we're going to use Goblin Engineer to go and get them. All of our spirits are designed to tax in some way, or you know, prevent our opponents from doing what they want to do. Selfless Spirit's great in particular because you can you know, you can give all of your creatures indestructible. That's really good because we've got quite a few wraths in this deck as well. Burgi, God of Storytelling, it's obviously that that ramp that we're talking about. You're going to get rituals off of your spells, and you basically want to ramp with this, and it's one of our main combo engines. Burnished Heart, another great card for something like this, where we're sacrificing it, and then we get to create an extra copy of the sacrificed creature with the Hofri Ghostforge, which is very cool. Bygone Bishop. Whenever you cast a creature spell with converted mana cost 3 or less, investigate. I think it's a great spirit, and you know, investigate is obviously a fantastic mechanic. We don't have a lot of card draw in these colors, thanks Wizard, but yeah, all good. Eternal Scourge, another combo piece. If you're not really sure about how they work, you know, there's lots of very detailed primers around Food Chain Loops. I'd encourage you to have a look at that. Goblin Matron. We've actually got 3 really good goblins in this deck in Goblin Engineer, Impulsive Pilferer, and Dockside Extortionist. So we're very happy about you know, being able to go and get any of those 3. And also the Squee the Immortal, obviously, you know, great card as well. So you can, you know, get your value off of the first one, then when it dies, you can go and get more value by tutoring out another piece to hand. So that's, you know, absolutely awesome when you get to double up the value. Hanged Executioner, a bit of graveyard hate, creates a creature token, so very good creature there. Skyclave Apparition, it's an all-star in every format. It's just absolutely fantastic, and it's a spirit. And I will draw your attention back to the commander. Spirits you control get +1/+1 and have trample and haste. So all of our stuff is going to have haste if it's a spirit, or once it's resurrected, it's going to have haste in that second round through. Squee the Immortal, great card, combo piece. We're not doing anything with it other than generating a whole bunch of mana, so yeah. Blinking Spirit, return Blinking Spirit to its owner's hand. You can do that at any time. So this is essentially another way that you could cast your Impact Tremors. If you've got a lot of mana, you can basically play it, return it, play it, return it, play it, return it. You can do all sorts of weird and wonderful things with that. Celestial Crusader, it's a flash lord that is done at split second. So, you know, super great because people can't interact with it until it resolves. So great card for this kind of deck. Getting everything with +1/+1 at split second is absolutely awesome. Sky Fire Kirin. It is a 2 and a red for a 3/3 flyer. When you play a spirit or arcane spell, you may gain control of a target creature with that spell's converted mana cost until end of turn. So we play a spirit, we play an arcane spell, and look at that, all of our creatures, they've got haste. So, you know, absolutely awesome for that. We can be swinging, they've got no blockers, but we can also use their creatures as sack fodder for our engines. So awesome card in this deck. Solemn Simulacrum, all-star in every format pretty well. Actually only Commander, but great card in this. You get to double up on the value with the ETB and leave the battlefield triggers. Windborne Muse, another spirit flyer. It taxes your opponents in attacking you. So really great card. Karmic Guide and Revelark, I'll attack these 2 together. So these are just a whole bunch of recursive piles that you can build with Revelark and Karmic Guide once you've actually got a sack engine that can generate you mana. So you can do things like the Karmic Guide enters the battlefield, returns the Revelark to the battlefield. You put the Karmic Guide trigger on the stack. The Revelark trigger is about to move back onto the battlefield, and then you sack the Karmic Guide in response to the trigger going onto the stack. The Karmic Guide disappears, the Karmic Guide dies, it goes to the graveyard, and then you can actually use the Revelark, can bring it back, you know, so that you can repeat that loop over and over again. You can actually get 2 creatures this way, and each time you do that, you get to loop around. You've got like a tight little combo with that. There's a lot of, I guess, aristocrat decks. If you have been a follower of the channel for a while, you would have seen my Nethroid deck that uses Revelark and Karmic Guide as a bit of a loop, as a sort of win con from a Hulk pile. Absolutely awesome cards in this deck. And look at that, one of these is a spirit at least. Revelark, obviously not, but yeah, it is definitely a card. And you can think about all of the different weird and wonderful ways you want to use Hofri's, you know, double ups on these abilities to actually generate excess value from this. You know, you shouldn't have cards in your graveyard by the time these resolve, and it's just absolutely insane what you can do with these. Next up, we've got Malignus. So this is kind of the big granddaddy of the deck. Absolutely insane card. It's already awesome in Commander in general. Power and toughness equal to half the highest life total among your opponents rounded up. Damage that would be dealt by Malignus can't be prevented. So this comes out as a 20/20, but with our Commander, because it is a spirit, look at that, it's got +1/+1, haste and trample. So you can absolutely smash face with this. Absolutely terrifying to have a hasty trample Malignus that just can come out of nowhere at any time. We've got Quintorius Field Historian. Whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard, create a 3/2 red and white spirit creature token. So maybe if you recall to the start of the video when I was referring to Squee the Immortal loops, this is another way that you can sort of generate additional targets for sacrifice, so that you can generate excess mana with that. So yeah, not a super tight I guess collection of cards because they're quite expensive, but you get the engine online and you can just go for broke. Thermopod is a Phyrexian altar on a creature, so absolutely awesome card. Return Past Caller, it's just a value piece for 6 mana. You're never really like worried about playing this early, but I just like it as a top end sort of piece for value. So occasionally if the board's wiped and you weren't the one wiping it, you can play this one the next turn. ETBs, return spirit, instant or sorcery from graveyard to your hand, and you sort of get to enjoy that benefit you know, more than once you get Hofri back on the field. Rounding out the creatures at the top end, we've got Elishnorn Grand Cenobite. There is one other thing I'll mention. You'll notice the collection of 5 drops, and then we've got a 6 drop with Return Past Caller, and then Elishnorn Grand Cenobite at 7. We're actually running a Pyre of Heroes, so that will allow us to actually that won't at all because it's not a it's not a cleric, so maybe I should think about that one. Oh well. So Elishnorn is just a great card. You know, +2/+2 for you. Creatures you control get -2/2. Just awesome for an aggressive deck like this at the top end. So yeah. Sorceries, we've got Faithless Looting, Gamble, Savine's Reclamation, Day of Judgment, Reconstruct History, Shatter the Sky, Wrath of God. So we've got board wipes, we've got recursion with Savine's Reclamation, we've got looting effects with Faithless Looting, Gamble, great card. We don't care if things go into the graveyard, that's fine. Really awesome card in this deck. Reconstruct History is a new one. It's just a value, I guess, card to sort of get quite a few pieces back from your graveyard. So awesome card in general. For our instants and sorceries, we've got Enlightened Tutor. We've got a lot of artifacts, so we can definitely tutor for something like that up onto the top, or we can get some of our enchantments, which are our sort of win cons. Path and Swords, no real explanation needed there. Boros Charm, just heaps of flexibility. Give your stuff indestructible. Because your deck is entirely built around the commander for the most part, giving creatures indestructible is pretty useful, because that's going to be the thing that your opponents are going to be targeting to destroy. So yeah, having something like Boros Charm is fantastic. Brought Back is another one that you would use to bring back your commander, so really good for something like that. Desperate Ritual, it's a ritual, it's also an arcane spell, so you've got a bit of synergy with your Skyfire Kirin. Deflecting SWAT, this is just a staple, you know, retargeting spells, so you're going to retarget and protect your Hofri, and, you know, sort of get a 2-for-1 and kill some of your opponent's creatures rather than yours. Through the Breach, put a creature onto the battlefield, it gains haste, sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. Well, we don't care if things get sacrificed because we get a token copy of them as well, so awesome card. You could definitely run Sneak Attack in this deck as well. I just didn't include it because I felt that we already had enough ways to win, but if you wanted to sort of rejig this and have Sneak Attack instead of Through the Breach, I couldn't fault you on that. Coming up to artifacts, we've got Jeweled Lotus, Lotus Petal, Mana Crypt, Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, Boros Signet, Ruby Medallion, Talisman of Conviction, and those are our mana rocks. Should be pretty straightforward, nothing too surprising in any of those. We've got Stoneforge Masterwork. So this is a tribal equipment basically. So your spirits get +1/+1. The equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each other creature you control. So absolutely insane value with that. You know, it'll be 2 equip. 8/8. It's going to be absolutely mental in any game state. Even early on, it's going to add 3 or 4 to your biggest creature. We've got Altar of Dementia, Ashnod's Altar, Phyrexian Altar. All of these are for sack outlets so that you can start those loops, with obviously Altar of Dementia being a way to sort of mill your opponents and sort of get the win on the spot there. Ruby Medallion, the red spells costing one less to play, it's actually super relevant, particularly if you're going to be doing those loops. Pyre of Heroes, pod into another spirit, so pod from your 1-drop spirit into a 2-drop, 2 into a 3, etc, etc. And because you have that sacrifice effect, you get to keep a token copy of that creature, so you're never really losing value with that. Desecrated Tomb, whenever 1 or more creature cards leaves your graveyard, create a 1/1 black creature token with flying. So quickly you're going to have heaps and heaps and heaps of bats, so make sure you have a lot of those tokens. Herald's Horn, choose a creature type. Our spirits are going to cost less. We can cast spirits off the top. Long Forgotten Gohi, don't know how to pronounce that correctly, but it's just a specific spirit tribal, I guess, artifact. Arcane spells cost 1 less to cast. Spirit creatures you control get +1/+1, so we get that Lord effect. Moving on to our enchantments, we have Goblin Bombardment, Impact Tremors, Underworld Breach, Anointed Procession, and Smothering Tithe. So Anointed Procession, double up the amount of tokens. Great card in this kind of deck. These just represent our win cons. If you wanted to go really, really hard into the Underworld Breach, I guess LED kind of line, I couldn't fault you. I chose not to go too hard into this, mostly for 2 reasons. I don't have a lot of the expensive staples like your LEDs, that kind of stuff, but also I just find that there is enough Breach decks out there already, and we would just be a worse version of a much better Jeskai or Grixis list that would be able to utilize, Underworld Breach in a much better way. So that's pretty much rounds out everything apart from the land base. We've gone super basic with the lands for this list. All your fetches, your Jewel, your Shock, and then I guess a few spicier pieces in Gemstone Caverns. Occasionally we get to exile our Squee, and that's kind of an advantage for us, or our Eternal Scourge. Our Hall of Heliod's Generosity, occasionally we want to reload with an Underworld Breach or re-put our Anointed Procession or Smothering Tithe back onto the field. Other than that, that's pretty well the deck in its entirety. Thank you so much for checking out the list. As always, feel free to leave any comments in the YouTube video or on Moxfield. I do check all of the comments and reply to everyone that I can. Thanks so much for checking out the video, and I'll see you next time.